Howling transforming spirit is one of the great masterpieces of the early 1960s by KIUGAK ASHOONA, one of the outstanding artists from Cape Dorset. KIUGAK was considered probably the only close rival to Oshwitok Aipuli in Cape Dorset. He started carving at an early age, around maybe the age of 14. He believes that he was the first Cape Dorset artist to make a carving for James Houston when he first visited Cape Dorset. By the early 1960s, Cape Dorset artists had found quarries of a beautiful green stone, and this is a classic stone from the late 50s and early 1960s. Around the same time, a kind of school of spirit sculpture developed in Cape Dorset, and KIUGAK ASHOONA was the foremost artist using this style. There are three great masterpieces, I feel, by KIUGAK from this period. The Howling, Spirit, and Young from 1962. This work probably circa 1963, and another wonderful spirit work, an untitled spirit work in the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts collection. The remarkable feature of this work is that it's actually a double visage. You've got this more placid, almost peaceful looking gargoyle in the front, which transforms to a snarling, sort of almost lion-like, much more powerful, perhaps evil spirit at the top of the head. And interestingly, the mouths are actually connected. So KIUGAK actually carved up through the head and out the snarling snout. Some interesting features of this work is there are 5 toes on the feet, but there are actually 5 fingers and a thumb on each of the hands. We don't know if this has spiritual significance, but we do know that KIUGAK knew quite a bit about shamanism because his father-in-law, Kiakshuk, was a famous, not only a famous artist, but a famous shaman, considered the most powerful shaman locally in Cape Dorset. And he heard stories from Kiakshuk about shamanism, and said in an interview that he actually could hear Kiakshuk being devoured by wolves in the night. And of course, this was a ritual process. It wasn't literal, but it was something that his father-in-law would go through periodically. So he was steeped in stories of and actually experiences of shamanism as a young man. This work was owned by Paul Duval, who was perhaps the most famous Canadian art critic of the 1960s and 70s. This was in his personal collection. And the work is actually reproduced in George Swinton's Sculpture of the Eskimo, the seminal book by George Swinton, which came out in 1972. But as far as we know, the work was never exhibited. The 2 photos in Swinton's book are small postage stamp images that really don't do justice to the power of this fantastic work. KIUGAK visited Ottawa in 1959 and actually had a tour through the Parliament buildings. It is very likely that he was inspired by the gargoyles that are part of the neo-Gothic architecture of the Parliament buildings. And we know that he produced at least 3 sculptures of lions in the years following that visit. And we're fairly certain that the gargoyle-like features of this work are probably inspired by the gargoyles that he saw on Parliament Hill.